Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza is brought to you by Sport Relay. Honest, unbiased, and apolitical. Sport Relay, your connection to the diamond. And by A Complete History of the Major League Baseball Playoffs, Volumes 1 and 2 by Evan Thompson. Relive the glory, the complete history of the Major League Baseball Playoffs. This week on Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza, the new Yankee relievers aren't off to a great start. Two crazy comebacks on the same day. We have some injury updates. We take you through the latest update of the Drew Pomeranz Ticker. We take you through the team and individual power rankings for Week 18. And we have a visit with our special guest, Barry M. Bloom from Sportico. Don't go away. Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza begins now. Welcome to Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza. I'm your host, Evan Thompson, Editor-in-Chief, National Writer, and Athletics Writer at Sport Relay. I also wrote these two books, A Complete History of the Major League Baseball Playoffs, Volume 1, Pre-Divisional Tiebreakers through 1976, and Volume 2, 1977 through 1984. If you are interested in ordering a copy or two, there are links in the description box below this video. We have finished Week 18 of the 2025 season. Our statistics include all games through the end of play on Wednesday, August 6th. Let's take a look at some of the biggest stories from the past week in the world of relief pitching. In our last episode, when we went through all the reliever-involved trades from the trade deadline, we mentioned that the New York Yankees traded for 3 relievers, one who was a setup man for his previous team, and 2 who were closers. They were in desperate need of help, as evidenced by their finish as the shakiest relief corps of the American League in July. The 3 pitchers were former Colorado Rockies setup man Jake Bird, former San Francisco Giants closer Camilo Doval, and former Pittsburgh Pirates closer David Bednar. Between their arrival in New York and August 8th, their performance has not been what the pitchers have hoped for, let alone the Yankees or their fans. Here is what the trio of newcomers has done. Each of them has 3 games in relief, so not a big sample size, but 2 of them have more games in relief than innings pitched, which is not good. Jake Bird's whip is outrageously high. Camilo Doval's whip is really high. And David Bednar, you can't really say it's the best. It's more of the least bad. Home run percentage is extreme for Jake Bird and high for David Bednar. But again, I mean, they only pitched 2 innings and 4 1/3 innings respectively, but that's still a bad sign. K percentage is fine for Bird, fine for Bednar. Walk percentage is not good for Bird, not good for Bednar. And for Doval, the K percentage and walk percentage are exactly the same, something you never want. Each of these 3 pitchers gave up runs in a high-leverage situation. 2 of them have broken eggs. Bednar, the only thing that kept him from getting a broken egg is that he entered the game with no runners on and 1 out instead of no runners on and nobody out. That's the only thing that kept him from having a broken egg. Scoreless outing percentages, small sample size, but bad sign. And because of this, Bird, his first game he gave up runs, second game was a 1-2-3 inning, third game he gave up runs, including the winning run. The Yankees said, we can't take this. We're trying to stay alive in a playoff hunt, and they sent him down to Scranton. On August 1st, the first day as a Yankee for each of these 3, the Yankees faced the Marlins in Miami. When Jake Bird took the mound for the Yankees in the bottom of the 7th, he did so with a 9-4 lead. Notice here that, unlike Devin Williams, he shaved his beard. Didn't help, though. The first batter is Agustin Ramirez, a former Yankee who came over in the Jazz Chisholm trade last year, and he rips one off the wall in right. Ramirez thought it was gone, wasn't running hard out of the box. It ended up being a long single. Almost got backpicked, but he got back safely. Heriberto Hernandez struck out swinging for the first out. Otto Lopez, however, strokes a single to left. Ramirez running hard this time, makes it all the way from first to third, and on the throw to third, Lopez, with a heads-up play, gets to second. Next batter, Liam Hicks. On a 3-2 count, ball 4 misses badly. Now Kyle Stowers, the All-Star. Deep fly to left. That's going to get out of here for a grand slam. Now the Marlins are back in it. It is 9-8. Got too much of the plate there, and Stowers just crushed it. You're going to bring in David Bednar now with one out and the bases empty. He got the first batter, Eric Wagner, to ground to short for the second out. But Javier Sanoja, line drive to the deep left field line, second homer of the game, tie ball game. Jacob Marcy, a Central Michigan product who arrived in the Luis Arraez trade, doubles to right center. His family's there. That's his first major league hit. You'll love to see that. Now Xavier Edwards chops one up the middle. It's a single to the shortstop. Volpe can't get a handle on it. Now we have runners on the corners for Agustin Ramirez again. He rips one to left for a base hit. Marcy scores. Xavier Edwards gets to third. It's a 10-9 game in favor of the Marlins. Heriberto Hernandez popped foul for the third out. Now, despite the blown lead, neither Bird nor Bednar got a broken egg. Bird had too big a lead when he entered the game, and Bednar didn't have any runners on when he entered the game with one out. Top of the eighth, 10-9 lead. Lake Bacher in to protect the lead for the Marlins. That lasted 5 pitches because the first hitter, Volpe, hit a game-tying homer. Broken egg for Bacher. Bottom of the eighth, tie game. Bednar pitches a 1-2-3 inning for a goose egg. Top of the ninth, Anthony Bender retires Giancarlo Stanton and Jazz Chisholm Jr. 2 outs, Ben Rice pinch hitting, single to right. Pinch runner Jose Caballero, whom the Yankees acquired from the Rays via trade the previous day while they were playing the Rays. By the way, did I mention he's the major league leader in stolen bases? You see why right here, because he steals second with a walking lead. Runner in scoring position for Ryan McMahon, and he just strokes one up the middle. Base hit, 11-10 Yankees. Broken egg for Bender. A double by Volpe makes it 12-10. Okay, bottom of the ninth, 12-10 Yankees. Camilo Doval in to close, gets Graham Pauley to ground to first for one out, but Sanoja, well, at least it wasn't a homer, right? Single to left center, bringing up Jacob Marcy. He takes a 7-pitch walk, nearly gets hit in the foot by the last one. Sanoja to second. Now Xavier Edwards on the second pitch, a single to right. Oh no! Oh no! Caballero in right field overruns the ball, and it is a tie game on the error. Winning run now at third in the form of Edwards. Crowd going wild. Look what happens here. He just overruns it. Infield in because that run can't score. The game's over. Ramirez hits a dribbler in front of the plate. And, well, notice here there's nobody to cover home because who would cover home there? It's impossible. And that's the ball game. Marlins win the game. Doval gets the broken egg. Yankee fans watching at home get broken remote controls from ramming them repeatedly against the coffee table. That same day in Denver, the Rockies fell behind 9-0 in the top of the first and still won the game. But their game didn't have any broken eggs at all because at no point did a pitcher enter the game when a goose egg was possible. And as we said earlier, one of the main rules in the goose egg broken egg universe is if a goose egg isn't possible, then neither is a broken egg. Baseball. On to some injury news, both bad and good. This first one is bad. Trent Thornton of the Seattle Mariners tore his Achilles tendon July 31st when falling off the mound while attempting to cover first base on a ground ball while facing the Texas Rangers. He had surgery August 5th, and his timeline for return is 6 to 8 months. Kansas City Royals right-handed middleman Steven Cruz went on the 15-day injured list August 3rd with a right shoulder impingement. The latest plan is for him to be reevaluated August 11th to see if he can begin a throwing program. Kevin Ginkel, who is closing for the Diamondbacks, went on the 15-day injured list August 4th with a sprained right shoulder. That was retroactive to August 3rd, since the last time he pitched was August 2nd. They could start his injury list stint on August 3rd, meaning they could bring him back August 18th instead of August 19th if they had to start it on August 4th. So that's why they do that, for those who don't know what retroactive means. The second opinion confirmed that he had a sprained right shoulder. He will have no throwing for 6 weeks, so the retroactive ended up not mattering, but they didn't know that at the time. Brady Basso of the Athletics has resumed his rehab assignment. If all goes well, he could be activated before long, giving the A's another lefty option out of the pen. Amidst the struggles of the Yankees since the deadline, they did get some good news. Right-handed middleman Mark Leiter Jr. returned from the injured list August 5th. 3 key Dodgers relievers, setup man Michael Kopech, lefty closer Tanner Scott, and middleman Kirby Yates received updates. Kopech is, in the words of Dave Roberts, knocking on the door to get back. He has thrown another bullpen session and is getting closer to facing hitters. Scott has also thrown another bullpen session and is also getting closer to facing hitters. Yates, guess what, has thrown another bullpen session. Of the Dodgers' injured relievers, he is the closest to facing hitters. We at Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza, as always, wish a full and speedy recovery to all these players and everyone else on the injured list. Now it is time, once again, for
the Drew Pomeranz Ticker.
Since our last episode, all his appearances have been at home. That means that, as a reliever, he still has not given up an earned run on the road since July 21st, 2021, at Atlanta. His road scoreless streak remains at 19 appearances, and we will, of course, keep tracking this impressive streak as long as it lasts. Coming up next, the team power rankings. Welcome back to Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza. It is time for the Team Relief Corps power rankings. They include every pitch thrown in relief by a player wearing said uniform, excluding position pitchers. Now, keep in mind, the trade deadline just happened, so some of these teams, they're either gaining benefits from or paying the price for people who aren't on the team anymore. Normally, the way I would get around this is to limit it to since the deadline only, but our stats cut off August 6th. 6 days worth of statistics is not enough to have any meaningful statistics whatsoever. The sample size is just not great enough. So we're going to put that off for a little bit. And right now we'll just go ahead and go from the beginning of the season through August 6th. Once we have enough days since the trade deadline, then we'll go ahead and make it trade deadline to present only. Got it? Okay, cool. Back to the rankings here. Teams are ranked in clutch, run prevention, base runner prevention, and command weighted as shown in this table. The final score determines the ranking. 0 means right at league average, positive is better than average, negative is below average, a score of 100 means the team is 100% better than league average, a score of 50 is 50% better, negative 50 is 50% lower, and so on. Each whole number equals 1 percentage point. Statistics run through the end of play on Wednesday, August 6th. We'll start with the number 30 team and work our way to number 1. American League teams will appear in red, National League teams will appear in blue. The first number in parentheses after the team name is their rank within their specific league. The number after the comma indicates the change in their major league rank since our last episode. Here we go. Pray for a blowout win if you are a fan of the Washington Nationals, holding steady at number 30 with a score of negative 12.4. Fans of the next 4 teams should stock up on Tums. The Chicago White Sox have dropped 1 spot to 29th with negative 9.4. Arizona Diamondbacks have fallen 1 position to 28th, scoring negative 8.3. The Atlanta Braves are showing some improvement, climbing 2 spots to 27th, albeit with negative 7.8. And the Colorado Rockies remain at 26th with negative 7.4. These next 3 teams have lots of work to do. The Los Angeles Angels have slipped 1 spot to 25th, scoring negative 2.5. The Tampa Bay Rays have gained 1 position to 24th with negative 2.0, and the Detroit Tigers hold steady at 23rd with negative 1.6. In the next group, slightly below average, the New York Yankees have dropped one spot to 22nd after scoring 1.1. The Baltimore Orioles have fallen 2 positions to 21st with 2.5, and the Cincinnati Reds have jumped 2 spots to 20th with a score of 3.7. Middle of the pack teams here in the group we call the average include the St. Louis Cardinals down 2 to 19th with 5.0. The Philadelphia Phillies hold at 18th with 5.3. The Milwaukee Brewers have made the biggest move in this tier, climbing 3 spots to 17th after scoring 5.8. The Athletics have stayed put at 16 with 6.2, while the Los Angeles Dodgers remain at 15th with 7.1. These 3 teams are slightly above average. The Texas Rangers holding steady at 14th with 8.8. The Kansas City Royals have stayed at 13th with 9.9. And the Toronto Blue Jays have slipped 1 spot to 12th, scoring 12.4. In our next tier, the good, the Minnesota Twins have gained 1 position, moving to 11th with 15.6, and the Pittsburgh Pirates have dropped 1 spot to 10th with 16.9. Now for the very good. The Houston Astros have climbed 1 spot to 9th after scoring 20.2. The Chicago Cubs have fallen 2 positions to 8th with 21.5. The San Francisco Giants have held steady at 7th with 21.8. And the Seattle Mariners have jumped 2 spots to 6th with a score of 22.2. Teams who hope to defeat these next 3 had better take an early lead, as a late-inning comeback is not likely. The Miami Marlins have dropped 1 spot to 5th with 25.7. The Boston Red Sox have climbed 1 position to 4th with 27.17, rounded to 27.2. And the New York Mets have held at 3rd with 27.20, also rounded to 27.2. And finally, our 2 elite relief units. The Cleveland Guardians remain dominant at 2nd in the majors and 1st in the American League with 36.0. And sitting alone at the top once again are the San Diego Padres with an impressive 37.7. The biggest gainers in this edition of the rankings are the Brewers, who climbed 3 spots, and the Braves, Reds, and Mariners, who each climbed 2. The biggest drops came from the Orioles, Cubs, and Cardinals, who each fell 2 spots. Before we end this segment, a look at this week's scatter plot. We will be right back with our guest, Barry Bloom. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza. I have here with me a great friend, mentor, longtime writer. He's been everywhere from Sportico, Barry Bloom. Barry, welcome to the show.
Hey, Evan. Thanks for having me on.
Barry's been a Hall of Fame voter since 1990. He goes to the induction every year. I did not get to go this year, but where I ended up was good, but that's for a different topic. So Barry, the 9th reliever, was inducted at the ceremony, Billy Wagner. What were your general feelings at the induction ceremony when you saw Billy go up there, and what were your feelings of his speech?
I think there was like nobody more touched about getting into the Hall of Fame than Billy. You know, as for Sabathia and Ichiro was something different because, you know, they were elected Ichiro almost unanimously on the first ballot and CeCe on the first ballot. But, you know, Billy had to wait like all 10 years on the ballot. He just didn't know whether he was going to get in or whether he was not. You know, and, you know, my thing with Billy, and I thought it was really sweet because he shouted out Jesus Ortiz for his help in getting him into the Hall. And, you know, 2 years ago, I had never, first 8 years on the ballot, I'd never voted for Billy. I figured whether, you know, if John Franco was not in the Hall and he had 2 more saves than Billy as a left-hander, you know, why would I vote for Wagner? Plus, I didn't particularly cover much of Wagner, always as a visiting player, and I didn't particularly like some of the things I heard about Wagner from Larry Bowen and a bunch of other people. But be that as it may, you know, at the winter meetings 2 years ago, before I had submitted my ballot, Jesus came up to me and he asked me, what will it take for me to get you to vote for Billy Wagner? And, I went through all this stuff and we kind of joked and bartered off. And I said, well, if you vote for Pettit, I'll vote for Wagner. But first I want to talk to Wagner. So he gave me his telephone number and he called Billy and says, Barry would like to talk to you. Billy said, sure. And I wound up having really one of the most interesting and profound conversations I ever had with with a major league player. I had no idea what Billy's childhood was like. I knew when he quit the Braves, Cox and a bunch of those guys, they wanted him to come back for another season because he had a great season. And Billy was like, no, I'm not going to count more saves into my counting stats just to hang around. It's more important for me to spend some time now with my kids because I don't want to have happen to my kids what happened to me. And so it turns out that, Billy, mother and father broke up early. He was shunted from relative to relative. He went to 11 high schools. Obviously there's the story about him breaking his right arm and learning how to pitch with his left arm. But I mean, here's a kid who could have been by the wayside, but baseball saved him. He became, one of the great all-time relievers and all-time people. And I said to him, this explains to me why you left baseball when you did. And now I completely understand, you're not as much of a on the bubble Hall of Fame player I might think you are. You're a complete Hall of Fame person. So I'm putting you on my ballot. I'm voting for the Hall. And he thanked me profusely. And so I voted for him the last 2 years. So his whole, the gratefulness of all of this came out. When I saw him at the bar at the Otesaga on Friday night, he gave me a big hug and thanked me for everything I did. And I go, well, what did I do? And he goes, well, you know what you did. And I wrote a whole column about it, as I do every year when I write about my ballot. Mm-hmm. But that was the center of it, why I voted for Billy Wagner that year. And so, I thought his speech was kind of picture perfect for him. He was not a good orator. He got through it. He tried not to cry, and obviously his faith in God to get him through everything he's gotten through in his life and get him to Cooperstown was a prominent theme of the speech. And everybody had a prominent theme of their speech. Cece with the women in his life who helped mold him and create him and supported him, and Ichiro, just doing the speech in English and telling stories. And it's like, where was this guy for 19 years? It's like, and Ichiro was another one. I wrote my column last year about how all the crazy things I had with Ichiro over the course of the years.
Yeah.
But I said, I'm still voting for him.
Right.
And then when I saw him at the Hall on Saturday, he looked at me and said, it's been a long time. And he gave me a big hug. And all the antagonism and all that stuff sort of just melted away. And it's like, well, there's another one that goes by the scenes. I've seen it a number of times. Eddie Murray, Steve Carlton, Ryan Sandberg, what they were either non-communicative when they were players, or they basically gave you nothing. But when they became, Randy Johnson's another one, now you can't shut them up.
Right.
Rhino turned out to be one of the world's greatest guys. And he became a great friend of mine after he got into the Hall. And so, I think the same thing with Billy. He was really appreciative of the vote and how much time it took him to get in. It really meant a lot to him.
That's cool. And one thing I've noticed when I go anywhere where there's a lot of baseball people, just walking down the path with you for 5 minutes, you get like 4 hugs from all these people who know you and all that. And yeah,
well, I'm a hugger. So
yeah.
Like,
absolutely. Me too.
I met a WNBA coach early in the season for the LA Sparks, and we were bantering back and forth. And when the press conference ended, I said, hey, you did a great idea. You did a great job. And she gave me, we gave each other a hug. And I said, yeah, I'm a hugger. And she goes, yeah, so am I. I think they're nice. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
it makes a nice connection.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
People hated me when I hug Bonds all the time.
Yeah. And I remember when you introduced me to CC Sabathia, I got a big bear hug at the end. Of course, my face was like in the middle of his chest. He's such a big man, but
Yeah.
yeah. So, well, that was thanks for sharing that about the Hall of Fame. That was a great story with Billy. I don't remember you ever telling me about that phone call. That's something. I remember how grateful Scott Rowland was when he went in 2 years ago. Was Billy kind of similar to that?
Yeah, I think what happens is the guys who, like Blyleven, who went in his 14th year,
Mhm.
guys who've been on the ballot and been through the ringer for so long. I think the longer they're on the ballot and the more hopeless it seems to get for them every year, they're waiting for a phone call and they don't get it. I
Mhm.
think when they finally do get it, they're so much more appreciative than the guys who are stars and expect to get into the hall right away. I mean, most of the first ballot guys are no doubters. You've had a few where, Robbie Alomar got in the second ballot because some guys held him culpable for the spitting incident
Mhm.
in Toronto and said, yeah, he may be the greatest second baseman in history, but I'm not letting him in the first year,
Mhm.
which I think is stupid, but okay. Trevor Hoffman, I think, got in on the third year. I mean, I don't know how many, 4 or 5 years Messina took, but 270 wins. But I mean, yeah, the longer you go, the more appreciative you are. When I look at Cott, I mean, Cott was 15 years on our ballot. I don't know how many years, times he was on some veteran committee or another before he finally got elected in his 80s. You know, those are momentous things for people.
Same with Tony Oliva. Yeah. And Tony
Yeah,
Oliva
right.
was that same year. Yeah. So, um, well, shifting gears here, a few days after the Hall of Fame induction, we had the trade deadline. And I've covered since 19. I don't recall a trade deadline this crazy, especially with relief pitching. What were your overall impressions of, we can start with July 28th, but the days leading up to and then the deadline day itself. What were your impressions of all that?
I went from the Hall of Fame to Yankee Stadium to Tampa Bay Rays Yankee series, and I've never seen a more chaotic 4 days leading up to the trade deadline. And it showed a real divergence in what's going on in Major League Baseball at this point. The halves, like the Yankees, there was no question nobody was being traded away from the Yankees. They started picking up people, early. I mean, they picked up, the kid from the Colorado, third baseman from the
Ryan McMahon.
Colorado Rockies,
Yeah,
that man before the Hall of Fame weekend. And
right.
then, it was like Slater, who's now already on the disabled list. And then, you had, you know, Rosario, another position player.
Mhm.
And, then you go into the final day and they made their flurry with all the relief pitchers. But I mean, nobody was ever worried about being traded off to the Yankees. On the other hand, Tampa Bay was just complete chaos. Nobody felt safe. And, I said to Kevin Cash, I don't know if have you ever been through a 4 day period like this? Like before Monday night game, they had Danny Jensen in the lineup, and and about 15 minutes before the game, they had to pull him out of the lineup, and they replaced him by his backup catcher because he was traded. Then on Wednesday, uh, their starting pitcher Littell, he came out of the game after 5 innings, and before the game ended, he was traded, and he was gone from the locker room before the game was even over. And then on trade deadline day, they traded Caballero to the Yankees in the seventh inning, and Caballero was playing first base because Aranda got hurt earlier in the game. He replaced him at first, and now they're they have to pull him out of the game and out of the lineup and send him to the Yankees. And by the time the game was over, he was in the Yankee clubhouse getting ready to fly with them to to Miami, rather than go to Tampa with the Rays. And we were standing outside of the Rays locker room waiting to talk to Cash, and a truck was loading on with brand new Yankee gear, which they were loading all of Caballero's gear into the Yankee bags and sending it over to the other side. And then Boone said he briefly got a chance to talk to Caballero when he walked into the clubhouse before he talked to us. And it was like, wow, I said, yeah, you played well. You've done well against us. I'm glad to have you. But I mean, that's just a microcosm of it. And then, the way I wrote my trade stories was this was just happening all over the country. I mean, I talked to, some people, the Padres, O'Hearn was traded. I said, well, when did you find? I said, that must have been chaos in the Baltimore locker room, because they traded away O'Hearn and Laureano to the Padres. They traded Mullins at the last minute to the Mets. He said, yeah, we were sitting in there. I said, did you know you're going to be traded? And he goes, yeah, they had told me kind of like the night before I was going to be traded. So I said, did you know it was going to be the Padres? And he said, no. He goes, it was one of 5 teams at that point. He said, at 3:00 in the afternoon, they told me I was traded to the Padres. I mean, I think there's got to be a much more coherent way of doing this. And I was talking to Torey Lovello about it yesterday when he had the incident where they traded Grichuk on Saturday in the middle of the game in Pittsburgh to Kansas City, and he had to call Grichuk down, who was in the lineup, and call him into the dugout, the tunnel below the dugout in Pittsburgh, and tell him he was traded. And now Grichuk comes up to the dugout, starts hugging all his teammates. The cameras are on him, and everybody's like, well, he must have been traded. And this is before the Diamondbacks or Kansas City even announced the trade. I mean, there's got to be a format for this where if guys are playing in a game, they finish the game. And then, then they're told afterwards, a press release or something is sent out to the press. This whole thing, and I don't begrudge Jeff Passan or anybody for the hard work they do in breaking these stories, but the constant leaks of these trades, and it happens in the NBA too with those writers who do those things, it creates mass chaos because people are finding out on social media that they're traded before the teams are even telling them. And it's not fair. It's just not fair. Really, the Players Association and Major League Baseball have to get a hold of this, because there's only 3 places it could come from. I don't believe it comes from the teams at all. I certainly don't believe it comes from Major League Baseball. So that leaves the union and the agents. And I think the agents are mostly culpable for this, and they have their guys. And as soon as one of their guys is traded, they call a member of the media who they're tight with and have reciprocal agreements with and give them those stories. And it's tweeted out there, and the chaos begins. So, like I said, under the system, I don't begrudge any reporter from doing that. They're doing a great job in doing their work. But for the overall composure of the whole thing and how players and management and people deal with this, these guys are guys. They're people. They're real people. When I saw Naylor up in Seattle and talked to him a bit, he's pretty happy-go-lucky. But to make the adjustment now, one day you're in Arizona, next day you're in Seattle. He got traded earlier in the season from Cleveland, but in the offseason from Cleveland. And then Suarez is like back to Seattle after Seattle gave up on him and sent him to the D-backs. And now what's your conflicting feelings about all this as a human being, as you're having to deal with all this stuff? And is it any wonder that Naylor and Suarez were 1 for 14 on Saturday and Sunday? No.
No, of course not.
It takes time for you to adjust to new environments. Look what happened with and we'll talk about the Yankees, but look what happened with the 3 bullpen pieces the Yankees came up with. In Miami, they let up 9 runs on Friday, the first time they used them in the game. You just don't step in and suddenly, well, I was in low-level situations, with Pittsburgh Giants, and and now and now all of a and Colorado, and now all of a sudden you're pitching for the Yankees in the middle of a pennant race.
Yeah.
And the pressure is just on. I mean, it's like everybody's watching you. I mean, I don't know what the feeling is for that player when they go out to the mound. And you can tell me all you want that there's this is part of the business, but these are human beings, and it's a part of life that people are going to be really upended by all this. And I watched it with the Suns. Their whole handling of Durant and Beal before the trade deadline, it destroyed the team.
Oh,
Any
yeah.
chance the team had winning last season was destroyed by it, because Beal, once the trade deadline was gone, neither of them were traded. After all the rumors, both of them didn't play 4 games. Beal hardly came back the rest of the year. Durant was interested in scoring his 30,000th point, and that's it. And he didn't care anymore. And the coach had lost control of the team. And I told Tori about this. Watch out for this. When I left, I had left after the Houston series, and they were going. I was going to Cooperstown. They were going on a 9-game road trip. I said, when you get through this, your team could be destroyed. And it was. The way they handled it and all the rumors, people shut down. You can't say, look, it's on you now. If you play well, we're not going to break up the team. But if you don't, you're gone. And everybody who's a free agent on the team going into next season knows they're expendable.
Mm-hmm.
And you're telling them it's on you when you have a bullpen the way that they have that doesn't support you. I mean, it's a team game, So, I mean, I think the Diamondbacks were destroyed by how the trade deadline was handled too.
Yeah, and if you're afraid of failing, you're more likely to fail. That's just human nature, and I don't care what industry it is,
Especially in a game where, unlike most of the rest of the world, if you and I as sports writers bet 300, we're not going to have our job very long.
Right.
It's like Major League Baseball. If you go 3 for 10, you're at the epitome of your game. If it starts going down and it's now 2 for 8, you're in a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
That's a margin. 2 for 8 and 3 for 7 is the whole difference in you being a great player or a really good player in this day and age to being like a Mendoza line player.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to me that with analytics and everything that most management considers this at all anymore. They're all like fantasy baseball players in a fantasy world, and they're there to be manipulated and traded and doing this, doing that. There's no cognizance, and I've been saying this for years, there's no cognizance in the fact that the numbers that are built that you are using are all based on how the player feels that day, whether they have an aching hamstring, whether their wife yelled at them before they left the house, whether a kid is sick, whether you have a hangnail. All these things contribute to the fact of, you look at the numbers, that's the numbers. Those are the guys that are producing your numbers. And it's all based on the human element. It's not based on anything else. The number is the product, but the way you get to that product is the whole reason why these guys are there. Mm-hmm. And until that is taken into some sort of consideration, and not that it ever has in the history of Major League Baseball, it was worth before the reserve clause, and guys were just completely expendable. Mm-hmm. Now, at least they get paid. They're going to walk away and they're going to get paid. Right. But, it boggles my mind that we don't have a more holistic approach to this at this date and time.
Yeah. And along the lines of the rumors, Joe Kelly the night before the trade deadline, he had heard on social media that he had definitely been traded, and he called the team upset, wondering where he was going. They said, "No, we haven't traded you." Um, that was a mess too, you know.
Yeah, well, there are other incidents of that, where look at remember the day with Flores in New York years ago,
Yes.
2018, I think it was.
Hmm.
And it basically gotten out on talk radio and social media that Flores had been traded to the Brewers.
Hmm.
And in the middle of the game, he's out on the field crying.
Hmm.
And Terry Collins, his manager of the Mets, has to call Alderston upstairs because he hadn't heard from him that he'd been traded. And he goes, "Well, what's going on? We're hearing that Flores is trading. He's really upset." And then, Alderson said, "Well, he hasn't been traded yet." And as it turned out, the guy who was being traded for him by Milwaukee, they had a physical, and they came up with a problem, and they didn't make the trade. They went out and got Cespedes instead, which was don't win the pennant without Cespedes that year. That's how good Cespedes was at that point in his career. But you destroy a guy because all these things get out.
Yeah. Now talking about the Yankee guys, they had a terrible, well, I wouldn't say terrible. We can say terrible. They did not have a good first game with them. Jake Bird, gave up all those runs in his first game. Second game, he did really well, 1-2-3 inning with 2 strikeouts. Third game was another disaster. He got sent down to Scranton this morning. What about the other 2 guys? How do you see them fitting in, Camilo Doval and David Bednar?
Well, I think that it's more of a long-term thing with those 2 guys. They still have Williams, which is problematic. He blew the game again last night, although up until the trade deadline, he was 17 for 18.
Mm-hmm.
And now, he's blown his last 2 saves. But, Williams is a free agent at the end of the year. I don't see any intent by the Yankees to re-sign Williams. But now they have Bednar and Doval under control for next year. So Bednar is their closer next year. There's no doubt about that. So now they can mix and match and use those guys, as they see fit in the game. You still have Weaver there. And, they've been dropping the Cruzes and Santoses and people. Those guys have gone down to the minors. The guys who are like their middle relievers and people like that they've had to rely on through this whole siege. And their bullpen has been, lousy at best. They don't have to rely on those anymore. So I think, you have, if you can get through 6 innings with a starter, then, you have whatever mix and match, Williams, Bednar, Weaver, and Doval, and, they're going to be just fine. And I laugh because I see, the Yankees haven't played well since the trade deadline because, again, when you trade players, get rid of players, look what happened to Marcus Stroman. I mean, he pitched on trade deadline day. He gave them 5 innings. They were up 7-0. He let up 4 runs, I think, in the 5th. Then there was a rain delay. He came out of the game. The Yankees won the game 7-4. He gets the win. The next day, they DFA'd him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've got a guy who's been there for 2 years. He's gone. Now you've got 4 or 5 new players who are coming in. You had at least 4, the 3 pitchers and Caballero. You had a couple of guys, Slater and Rosario and McMahon who had come in already. So that's 7 spots on a 26-man roster, and you're looking around the clubhouse, and it's completely different. All those guys have to settle in. So I just laugh at, the cry me, Boone's got to be fired. I mean, I thought Cashman had a pretty good trade deadline.
He did.
And, it's like, the Yankees are 5.5 games out in their division, and they're right there tied for a wild card spot right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like, how many games to go in the season? 40, maybe more.
Yeah, something like
They're
that.
going to be fine.
Yeah.
They're going to get through this period, and and if they can, and Judge comes back tonight. They missed him for 10 days. So Judge comes back as a hitter in the middle of their lineup tonight. And you look at their lineup with Stanton the way he's hitting, and Judge in the middle of the lineup, and Goldie, hit his first home run in a while last night. You got Goldie at the top of the order last night. It's like, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
McMahon batting 6th or 7th. Now he doesn't have to be the go-to guy like he was batting 4th in Colorado. It's like, just do what you can do and play great fielding for us. And Volpe, straighten out, get your head on straight. He's been hitting pretty well for them.
Mm-hmm.
And Chaz Grisham, Chaz at second, and you just go around. They've got a really good team. They're stocked. The fact that they're not playing well, I think they're going to get through it. And I'm not sure that Toronto is going to really hold on and win the whole thing. They've got their injuries now. Springer's out. He's got the concussion. They didn't do much at the trade deadline, so they got Bieber, but who knows what Bieber is going to be able to do for them coming back after a long period of time. And they have 3 or 4 at Yankee Stadium in September. So let's see. The Yankees have a chance. They haven't played well against the teams they needed to play well against this year. They lost 2 out of 3 in LA to the Dodgers. They lost 5 or 6 home and away to the Red Sox. They've lost all 8 games, I think, or 7 out of 8 games in Toronto against the Blue Jays. And you just can't have this in your own division. But they're still pretty well situated with a lot of talent and a lot of healthy players, going into the last 2 months of the season. So I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah, they'll be fine. The big thing with the Yankees, their weakness was definitely relief pitching. But they addressed that at the deadline. The Blue Jays, their relief pitching has been mostly fine, but Jeff Hoffman can have stretches where he can't get a high school team out. And then he can have stretches where he looks like Eric Gagne at the peak of his powers. So that's the weird thing there. One thing the Blue Jays did, this kind of snuck under everything else. They got Lewis Varland from the Twins on the deadline day. He's been terrific in middle relief for them and in setup. So that should help the Blue Jays there. But it'll be interesting to see how the AL East shakes out.
Done.
They're done. Okay.
They're like got 19 of the next 23 on the road.
Ooh.
And they were on the road on a long road trip before they came home last weekend. They were in Tampa for 2.5 days.
Ooh.
And they lost 203 to the Dodgers. Then they were shut out last night in LA by the Angels. They've got a 9-game Western trip right now. Angels, Sacramento, Giants.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. I give them all the kudos, considering the circumstances they played under. I was reading a story about them in one of the Tampa papers about what went wrong with the Rays this season. Mm-hmm. And they went through all the stuff on the field, their hitting, their starting pitching, the fact that they haven't had their full staff all year with their ace pitcher being out all season. And they did not mention what they've had to put up with playing at Steinbrenner Field and on the road most of the season. They've been displaced all season.
Yeah.
They haven't been playing in their home park all season. It's unreal what they've had to go through. And the fact that they're still within hailing distance of the wild card, because they're done in the division race, but they are in hailing distance of the wild card if they could pull a few things together. But I think what you look at the Red Sox right now. They trailed the Yankees by 10 games, and now they're ahead of the Yankees. The Yankees are in third place right now. It's like,
I think so, yeah.
They got, I think, Boston with no major changes at the trade deadline. All they really have been doing is winning. They had a 10-game winning streak going into the All-Star game. They've kind of waited fine since then, and they have a chance to make the playoffs and even win the division. So, and this is all since the Devers trade.
Yeah.
Where they actually started playing a lot better once they traded Devers, and the Giants have been the worst team in baseball since they got Devers. So how do you figure this all out?
Yeah, and Chapman looks like vintage Chapman. He's had a great season. So
Yeah, he's like, wow, 40, is he? And,
I think he's 36, but yeah.
throwing like 100 miles an hour still.
Yeah.
He's amazing. He's amazing that he returned to vintage Chapman after what happened to him, the way it played out with the Yankees.
Did he have that surgery done to him like Lee Majors is Steve Austin in the $6 Million Man? Because sometimes it seems like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Half our audience won't get that joke. But anyway, we're about out of time, Barry. So thanks for coming by here. It was a real treat to have you on. Hope to have you on again. And take care, and we'll see you around.
Hey, thanks, Evan. Thanks for having me on. It was great. Great interview.
Thank you. We'll be right back, so don't go away. Welcome back to Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza. It is time for the individual power rankings. Statistics include every regular season game through the end of play on Wednesday, August 6th. To qualify for the rankings, there is a minimum of 23 relief appearances, and for the Goose Egg Broken Egg Plus stat, which forms the bulk of the clutch category, there is a minimum of 11 goose eggs plus broken eggs. A link to our ranking methods is in the description box below this video. Before we proceed, one note. For the pitchers who have pitched for more than one team this season, and since the trade deadline there are dozens, what we did was this. We included them with whichever league the team that he's currently playing on is in, but we counted up his score from all season. So it was the easiest way we could do it. Splitting it like percentage-wise, weighting however many games he pitched in the American League versus the National League was just a mess. Not worth the trouble. So, like if somebody got traded from the American League to the National League, for example, Mason Miller was traded from the Athletics to the Padres. All his numbers are as if he pitched in the National League all season. Again, simplest way to do it. Here we go. We begin with our American League middle relievers. In 10th, with 13.1 from the Kansas City Royals, Taylor Clark. Coming in 9th with 14.9 from the Tampa Bay Rays, Brian Baker. In 8th, from the Toronto Blue Jays with 17.2, Lewis Varland. Coming in 7th, from the Texas Rangers, Sean Armstrong with 17.5. Coming in 6th with 18.9, from the Tampa Bay Rays, Garrett Clevenger. Our 5th place finisher has 19.8. It is Bennett Sousa of the Houston Astros. Coming in 4th, from the Toronto Blue Jays with 20.7, Brendan Little. In 3rd, from the Houston Astros with 25.7, Stephen Okert. Number 2 with 31.8, Gabe Spire of the Seattle Mariners. And number 1 with 41.3, from the Toronto Blue Jays, Braden Fisher. Now the National League middle relievers. Coming in 10th with 15.0 from the New York Mets, Gregory Soto. From the Chicago Cubs comes our number 9 pitcher with 15.3, Ryan Brazier. Coming in 8th from the New York Mets with 18.1, Reed Garrett. Coming in 7th from the Los Angeles Dodgers with 20.3, Jack Dreyer. In 6th from the San Diego Padres, David Morgan with 20.8. With 21.2 is our 5th place NL middle reliever, Nick Mears of the Milwaukee Brewers. Coming in 4th, Caleb Thielbar of the Chicago Cubs with 26.1. Coming in 3rd from the San Diego Padres with 31.3, Jeremiah Estrada. Drew Pomeranz of the Chicago Cubs is in 2nd with 33.9. And number 1, an all-star from the San Diego Padres with 36.2, Adrian Morejon. Now the AL setup man, number 10 from the Boston Red Sox with 62.6, Greg Weissert. Number 9 from the Cleveland Guardians with 71.0, Hunter Gaddis. Camilo Doval of the New York Yankees, despite his rough beginning with the team, is in 8th with 77.7. Number 7 from the Toronto Blue Jays with 81.3, Yariel Rodriguez. Number 6 with 94.1 from the Tampa Bay Rays, Griffin Jax. Coming in 5th
from the Seattle Mariners with 96.7, Matt Brash. In fourth place, from the Red Sox with 107.6, Garrett Whitlock. In third, from the Tigers with 110.1, Will Vest. Number 2, from the Astros with 120.5, Brian Abreu. And number 1, from the Royals with 123.8, Lucas Erceg. Now for the National League setup men. Number 10, from the Phillies with 64.8, Orion Kerkering. Number 9, from the Brewers with 66.6, Abner Uribe. Number 8, from the Mets with 70.0, Tyler Rogers. With 73.8 is our 7th place National League setup man, Brad Keller from the Cubs. In 6th with 74.1 from the Reds, Tony Santillan. In 5th with 82.7, a former closer, now a setup man since he's been traded to the Mets, Ryan Helsley. Number 4 from the Dodgers with 85.4, Alex Vesia. Number 3 from the Marlins, despite what happened against the Yankees on August 1st, Anthony Bender with 91.7. He's human too, you know. Number 2, used to be a closer. Now he's a setup man with the Padres with 96.9, last week's guest, Mason Miller. And number 1 is his Padres teammate, Jason Adam with 119.6. Now for the American League closers. In 5th with 112.9, having to step up because of the restricted list status of his teammate, Cade Smith. Number 4 from the Angels with 130.3, Kenley Jansen. Number 3 from the Red Sox with 142.2, Aroldis Chapman. Coming in second from the Astros, Josh Hader with 184.3. Look at that, 2 lefties in a row. And number 1 by a 55.4 point margin from the Seattle Mariners with 239.7, Andres Munoz. And finally, the National League closers. Number 5 from the Marlins with 117.0, Calvin Fauché. Number 4 comes from the Brewers with 124.0, Trevor McGill. Number 3 from the Pirates with 143.1, Dennis Santana. Number 2 from the Padres with 191.7, Robert Suarez. And number 1 by a commanding 137-point margin. That's insane. With 328.7 from the Mets, Edwin Diaz. That concludes this installment of Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza from Sport Relay. Join us next time when we will reveal our weekly power rankings for Week 19. I'm Evan Thompson. Thanks for watching, and we will see you then. Thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like. Click subscribe so you'll never miss an episode of this show or of our other show, Trade Trees. Tell your friends and baseball contacts. If you haven't done so yet, consider buying my books, A Complete History of the Major League Baseball Playoffs, Volume 1 and Volume 2. There are links in the description box below this video. And finally, bookmark and regularly visit sportrelay.com. Until next time, this is Evan Thompson saying so long for now.